Awesome. Ed, are you able to test your mic out real quick? See if it works.
Hey, can you hear me? This is Ed.
Yes. What's up, Ed?
Outstanding. Okay, great.
Yes. I've listened to a bunch of podcasts you've given, by the way. I actually gave a talk about layer twos when I first got started here at QuickNode, and Arbitrum was one of the chains I was talking about. So very much appreciated the podcast you had done.
Oh, great. Thanks. Yeah. I always like talking about this stuff.
Great. Awesome. So do I. So this will be a fun conversation for sure. Why don't we have some introductions here? Ed, you can go ahead and introduce yourself, and then Hunter, if you're not futzing about with the accounts, you can introduce yourself after Ed.
Hey, everybody. I'm Ed Felton. I'm a co-founder and chief scientist at Off-Chain Labs. We're the company that makes Arbitrum. And so as a co-founder, I've been at the company from the beginning, doing a lot of technical stuff, including protocol design and similar things. Before that, I was an academic. I taught at Princeton University, which is where the company was born. And I've done a bunch of other stuff, including working on the White House staff.
Yes, very storied career. Very, very impressive. So super happy to have you here.
Yeah. I'm not sure how I'm going to follow that up. No, I'm kidding. Hey guys, Hunter, the community manager over here. Been here for roughly actually about over a year now, which is pretty insane, since before we launched Arbitrum 1. But yeah, I just handle mainly a lot of the social stuff, event stuff, sometimes partnership stuff occasionally. Local freelance pretty much.
Awesome. Yeah, and today we are here to talk about Nova in particular and the Data Availability Committee. And this is a interesting, somewhat kind of niche technical topic, but also something that I think has a lot of implications for how we're going to be doing blockchain stuff into the future. So really curious to just get like a general definition of what is the Data Availability Committee and why is it important to have one?
Sure. Yeah, let me talk about that. So, we launched Arbitrum 1 about a year ago, almost exactly a year ago now, as an optimistic rollup. And it's worked really well. People seem happy with it. But of course, we're always trying to drive the cost to users of transactions down as low as we can. And so looking at Arbitrum 1 and optimistic or rollups generally, the biggest source of cost of operating chain, and therefore the biggest source of cost for users, is making sure that data is available. So rollups will put the data onto the Ethereum chain as call data. That makes it available to everybody, but it's relatively expensive. So what we did in Nova and the Anytrust technology is we say that instead of taking that data and writing it onto Ethereum as call data, we are instead going to have a committee, a data availability committee. These are well-known companies or people in the ecosystem who will promise to store your data and make it, all the transaction data, and make it available to anyone who asks. And the idea is that by sending out the data to all of those committee members and getting promises from them that they're all going to store the data, or almost all of them get promised to store the data, then you can have a really strong assurance that your data is available. And you can avoid the cost of having to store that data on L1 Ethereum. And so that lets you have a chain that is much cheaper, even than an optimistic rollup, which is already pretty cheap. So that's the basic idea, right? So you have this committee of well-established and trusted parties, and if you're willing to trust that even two of the committee members are honest, then you can be secure in the chain working correctly.
Yeah, this will be getting a little bit into the technicalities of it, but why is it just two? Like, why do we need two people to be honest versus any other arbitrary number of people?
So the reason you need two honest is, so right now there's 7 committee members, and the system will be satisfied with 6 of the 7 signing a promise to store the data. And the reason it's 6 out of 7 instead of all 7 is that you want to make it so that if one of them happens to be down or crashed or rebooting or offline for some reason, that the system's not going to stop. So six out of seven making that promise is enough. And so if you think about it, if two of the members are honest and and 6 out of 7 signed, well then you know that at least one of the parties who signed is honest, right? Because there's only 5 dishonest ones and 6 signed. So the reason that you assume 2 honest is basically that you want to be able to proceed with only 6 out of 7 signatures, and that's so that you could have one party down. We could have done it a different way, where we had needed everyone to be, all the committee members to be up and available all the time, and then you would only need to trust one. But we thought like trusting 2 and allowing 1 to be offline at a time just in case was sort of the sweet spot.
Okay, that makes sense. And so you mentioned that we have 7 different members of this committee. Could we get kind of like a roll call of who it is on this committee?
Yeah, let me say who's on the committee. And again, you just need to trust that 2 of these 7 are honest for the chain to work correctly. So the committee members are first QuickNode. Yeah. Also Off-Chain Labs, that's our team. Reddit, P2P, Consensus, FTX, and Google. So it's a pretty well-known set of parties in the Web3 and Web2 worlds. And basically, yeah, that's the current committee. The committee will probably expand over time, and adding members to the committee only makes it more secure, because instead of 6 out of 7 signatures, you'll have 7 out of 8 or 8 out of 9 or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very interesting model. And, you know, when you hear that list of companies, it's like the idea that any of them would try and like mess with the blockchain would be like such a huge reputation hit that it's just like, it seems like a fairly safe bet to me that, you know, they're all going to try and be, you know, good actors in this system. And maybe this is a question for Hunter, but like when we were kind of going out and selecting this kind of group of people, like was there a certain criteria or like people who had shown previous like community participation that you thought led to this being like a good solid group, because you're putting a lot of trust in each of these individual actors? So what was the kind of like thought process between how these were selected?
So, by the way, I'm getting my other account here. Apologies.
All good.
Actually, Ed, I'm not sure how much involved in the process you were, so you can definitely kind of give your take there when you get the chance. But I think generally, I think the idea was just to have different types of representation within that committee, right? So it's like having representation from Web 2, from Web 3, and even in there, there's they have your own little subgenres and stuff like that. So for example, if you don't trust Reddit, then maybe you'll trust Google Cloud, or if not them, then maybe you'll trust P2P Validator. I think I'm sure Ed can speak more to that, but yeah, I think that was a general idea.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, right? So you just need to trust that 2 of these parties are honest, or to put it another way, you need to trust that there won't be 6 of the 7 that gang up on you to try to steal your stuff. And so we wanted to have broad representation. We wanted to have companies that were well known, that had a reputation for doing a good job of running infrastructure, and and that it's all about building that sort of trust and comfort in the user community.
Awesome. Yeah, cool. So I have a lot of questions about kind of how like Nova relates to Arbitrum 1 and like the old system versus the new system. But before we get into any of that stuff, why don't we first just like define what is Anytrust and then what is Nova? I think that'll probably be the more explainable sequence for people.
Yeah, so let me go even one step earlier than Anytrust. The thing that we're all talking about these days, or one of the things, is Nitro. And Arbitrum Nitro is our all new software stack, which is a huge leap forward from what we've called Arbitrum Classic, which is like the original version of Arbitrum that we rolled out a year ago. So Nitro is our new stack, and Nitro has an optional feature, Anytrust. So Anytrust is this model that I talked about, where you have a data availability committee that stores it operates like a roll-up, except that there's this data availability committee which holds your data instead of writing the data onto Ethereum, right? So Anytrust is the technology, and then Nova is the chain that we launched Arbitrum Nova is the chain that we launched that uses Anytrust. It is our Anytrust. It is our mainnet version of Anytrust, if you will. So right now we have two mainnet chains. There's Arbitrum One, which is on the rollup technology that does store data on Ethereum at higher cost, but for maximum security. And then you have Nova, which we launched just a couple weeks ago. So basically, the idea is applications that want the utmost in security and are willing to pay a bit more, still very low, but a bit more for it. Arbitrum One is for them. For those who need the ultimate low cost, Nova is the way to go.
Very cool. Yeah, and I have one question. I'm always a big stickler for history, and I find history very, very interesting. And this is kind of just a question for my own curiosity, and then we have some audience questions already that I'll get to. But you mentioned in your blog post for this that Anytrust was the original proposed design in the first Arbitrum paper, and then the roll-up part of it was kind of taken and then actually built out. I'd be curious, why was that? Like, why did you originally kind of design this whole system, but then not actually build it until years later?
Well, it's a great question. So I guess here's how I would tell the history. That we had this original idea which we published as an academic paper for a particular kind of design, and when we went to start a company and turn it into a product, we thought that the best product to offer first would be a roll-up. The original design kind of had a roll-up in it as a kind of fallback for a case where you didn't have the whole committee available. The original one was a committee-based system, but if the whole committee wasn't available, you would fall back to a roll-up. And we realized that just the roll-up part of it had a lot of advantages as a product. So that's the thing we built first. And while we were building that, we made a ton of different improvements. We made it better in all kinds of ways. And so that's what we rolled out. So we realized maybe, 6 months ago, a little bit longer, that we could actually take this great roll-up we designed with a ton of improvements, and we could take the best ideas from the original academic Arbitrum paper from 2018, and we could just sort of add them in to our roll-up. And the result of that was Nova. So it really is kind of, as you suggested, sort of resurrecting some of the good ideas that were in the original Arbitrum design while keeping all of the improvements that we made in the meantime.
Very cool. Yeah, so we got a couple people who are putting some questions into the Twitter thread here, which is awesome. If anybody has questions, feel free to drop them, and then in a little bit we'll also open it up for people who want to join and ask questions. But someone asked a really interesting one, which is, could you ever see a scenario in which like individuals were added to the committee and maybe not just like corporations or companies? Would an individual be able to like earn that kind of trust?
Sure. I think if an individual had the kind of trust and stature in the community that makes them a logical committee member, absolutely. No reason we wouldn't do that.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, the committee size can't be too big because at some point, it could become inefficient. But the committee can grow quite a bit. And, we're just looking to see whether individuals or companies or nonprofits or whoever, has trust in the community and is willing to do it.
Awesome. Yeah, and then I don't know if this is a serious question. When token? When airdrop?
Well, no one ever answers that question.
Yeah. Oh, Twitter, always fun. Yeah, and then someone else is asking, and this is an obvious question I was going to ask as well. What would you actually use Nova for?
We really think of it as well suited for gaming and social type applications. Applications where the transaction fee levels on a roll-up, on a sort of classic roll-up, are higher than you'd like, and where you don't need the utmost in security. So a good example of that actually is Reddit, right? Reddit has rolled out a community points system from a couple of their communities so far on Nova, and it's a good example as a social application. They have to mint a large number of these community point tokens, and their users want to be able to do things with the tokens at low cost. And that's one example, but I think there's a lot of space for things like gaming as well. I really think of it as opening up space for new classes of applications in the Ethereum in this sort of Ethereum-based chain world.
Yeah, and Hunter, I was gonna say he's mentioning community stuff here, so I'd imagine you probably have a lot of thoughts on this and community use cases for this.
Oh yeah, totally. By the way, am I coming through okay?
Yeah.
This is one of my old phones.
Yeah, no, you sound great.
So yeah, no, 100%. So there's one game I know that's that has some plans to potentially come out on Nova, which is the Beacon. I'll probably pin the post above when I get the chance. But it's more like an MMORPG kind of based game. But I think what's really interesting to me, what I'm really looking forward to, is not just having like any kind of project kind of spin up with an NFT and then like you just kind of call it a game. But I think really just bring more kind of game, like actual like game developers, and having them make the game itself first, and kind of think about the integrating like the crypto part of it, midway through it, or maybe even like post thought. And I say that because I think like a lot of people, when people think of crypto gaming, they kind of just think of like sitting and staking, which is fine. But I think when people think about gaming generally, it's like the Call of Duties of the world. It's like I mean, maybe it's mobile gaming, like stuff like that. So
it's not just grinding, like yielded grinding.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of that's kind of the vision over time, as Hunter said, is to get to a place where this sort of the most immersive and interactive games can be on chain at large scale. So that it becomes just a part of the online gaming world, and not like just a specialized, very limited type of game that people might expect. We're really about opening up that space for as many applications as we can.
Awesome. Yeah. Any other things you want to highlight there before we move on to another line of questioning?
Good on my end. Yep.
Yeah. Let's move on.
Awesome. Yeah, so let's see. Yeah, so something that seemed to be an interesting point to bring up is bridging, and what is the status of bridging when it comes to Nova, and maybe like also just let people know like one liner, what is bridging, why is it something we should be concerned about? Yeah,
so bridging is basically how you move ETH or tokens, assets between Ethereum and some other chain. In this case, Nova. So people who are familiar with the bridging technology that we've used on Arbitrum 1, it basically works the same on Nova. You do need to take a step to move assets between the chains. So you can either deposit ETH or ERC20 tokens from Ethereum onto Nova, or once you're on Nova, you can withdraw. We have a bridge UI that's web-based. By the way, if folks are interested in kicking the tires of Nova and trying it out, you can go to nova.arbitrum.io, and there's a prominent link there to our bridge. So bridging basically lets you move Ether tokens back and forth, either onto the chain from Ethereum or to withdraw them back to Ethereum. And we provide this bridge, and then just like in Arbitrum 1, there are companies coming on board that provide other bridging functionalities, sometimes L2 to L2 bridging or other sorts of things. So you can use our bridge, or you can use a third-party bridge, which usually charge a small fee.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking back through I pinned, or I replied with the link to that you mentioned, if anyone's following along and wants to check that out. Let's see. It's always hard with these questions. I'm not sure which ones are bots and which ones are people, so I'm going to read some of them out, and you can let me know if they're ridiculous or not. Do you see game developers integrating Reddit community points?
I would love to see that.
Could you explain what Reddit community points are?
Yeah, so I mean, Reddit has this model where when you participate constructively in one of their, Reddit has all these all these different communities, and they have this basic model where when you participate constructively in one of those communities, you can earn points. And those points both kind of give you stature in the community, right? And get your posts and your upvotes and so on more, make them more influential. But Reddit has now, for 2 of their communities so far, have tokenized those points so that they become tokens that you own on the Nova chain. And so it seems to me like a really attractive thing for people in other spaces to recognize those points and to recognize. So as an example, someone who has a bunch of Reddit community points is probably a real person. And they also have probably participated constructively in some social space, right? So those are people who are more likely, or those are accounts that are more likely to be engaged in constructive participants in other kinds of social experiences. Also, because the Reddit communities are focused on particular sort of interest areas, these points are reasonable proxies for a person being interested in or engaged in a particular subject matter area. So if there's a game that is trying to cater to a particular community or social experience where you want to have a particular community or people interested in a particular thing, those points are probably an interesting affordance for a designer to be able to connect with. And so, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And this kind of goes along with this general trend toward sort of more open systems and the kind of mashup between social and gaming that's happening in the Web3 space. I see this as an example. I'm curious what Hunter thinks about this as well.
Oh man, so much. So I guess just to start off a little bit, to give a little color, a little more to like the Reddit side of things. So the 2 subreddits, as I mentioned, that have community points enabled currently is r/cryptocurrency with about 5 million members, and r/Fortnite BR, which has around like 2 million members in it. So already it's like 7 million, you could say, people that are exposed to this kind of new on-chain system, and which in a way it's like on-chain karma. I think is a good way to kind of just basically explain it on Reddit if you're familiar with it. And generally, I think in terms of like how it benefits like gaming communities going forward. I mean, in a way, like, so for a while, if any of you have any experience like kind of just playing like online, games, mainly kind of like MMOs and stuff like that, almost everyone has their own in-game economy. And, the longer a game is around, like the more so like the economy that's around it is very, very important. It sounds kind of like a joke. It's like, okay, it's like, online internet money. I guess that's a joke that we use for crypto.
I know people who made entire careers out of selling World of Warcraft gear. Like it's a real thing. It's been a real thing for a while.
And it's a very important thing, and it's central to like literally almost any game, World of Warcraft, RuneScape included. So I think this is literally just another way to kind of plug in your game to really have like this whole kind of ecosystem around it by having this token represent ownership in the game or whatever it may be, whatever they choose to use it for. So I think this is like I think it's really cool, and as I mentioned, it's going to be really cool to see kind of where gamers and communities take it, frankly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, we have a bunch of interesting questions actually in the replies right now. This might be a quick one, but what's the status for like oracles, like with Chainlink?
I mean, I guess you'd have to ask Chainlink when they're planning to launch on Nova. As people.
Well, I guess have there been like conversations there at all? I guess would be the question.
Have there been conversations? Yes. I mean, I don't want to. I think you'd have to ask them about what their plans are, and I don't want to. I don't want to be, I don't want to be blabbing about about private conversations. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we expect that over time we'll see a lot of the same services or in tooling rolled out and affordances rolled out on Nova that you see on Arbitrum One and other chains. From the standpoint of writing and deploying contracts and tooling, Nova works the same as Arbitrum One will once we've upgraded Arbitrum One to the Nitro technology, which is going to be a week from today.
Could you explain Nitro?
Yeah,
real quick, since you're mentioning it?
and I mentioned this a little bit early. Nitro is our new and rewritten software stack, which is much faster, more compatible, more efficient, and cheaper to operate than what we call the Arbitrum Classic stack. So the original Arbitrum 1 chain that we rolled out about a year ago is on the Classic stack, but it's going to migrate over to Nitro, a big software upgrade on a week from today, August 31st. Nova is already running the Nitro stack. So right now, the differences in sort of developer user experience between Nova and Arbitrum 1 are really about the relatively minor user experience differences between Arbitrum Classic and Nitro. But in a week from now, both chains, Nova and Arbitrum 1, will be running the Nitro software, and the only difference is this sort of the only difference visible to users will be that Nova has lower fees. So given how compatible they are, and that most tooling will run identically on the two, except for the fees that you have to pay to do it, we expect basically over time to see all the same sort of tooling and applications on both.
All right. It looks like we got the Arbitrum account up here as well. So got the whole crew here. Let's see, a couple other questions. I'm not sure what's up with this one, but I figure I might as well ask it. Was the relation between Arbitrum increased gas fees and Nova? Oh no, is gas something that comes into the picture with Nova versus Arbitrum 1 that's important for developers to know about?
Yeah. Right. So like any chain that has cost to operate, the Arbitrum chains have gas, and basically when you're using an L2 chain, the gas is paying for two things. It's paying for the service at L2, that's like the computation and storage that your contracts are using, and those fees will be identical between Nova and Arbitrum 1, because basically that part of operating the chain is the same across the two. The other thing that your gas fees pays for is data availability. That is making sure that all of the data of all the transactions is available to everyone who wants it. And both chains charge some gas for data availability, but the amount that you get charged for data availability, that's what's differ between Nova and Arbitrum 1. Once Arbitrum 1 gets upgraded to Nitro, then they'll work in the same way, but the L1 component of the fees will be lower on Nova, I should say the data availability component of the fees will be lower. And the data availability piece is the biggest piece of the fee. It's the highest cost of operating the chain, and therefore it contributes the most to the fee. That's why Nova is a lot cheaper, because we take what's the largest component of cost and we shrink that component down a lot. So yeah, so the difference will be basically that you get charged less gas for data availability on Nova compared to Arbitrum 1. All the other parts of gas, how much you get charged for computation, how much you get charged for storage in your contracts, that's going to be the same across the two chains.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, another question that came up that I thought was kind of interesting is there like governance? Like if this chain is going to be, continue to be developed or worked on or changed in any respect, how is that going to happen?
Sure. So right now we're managing the process. Obviously, we have this committee of data availability providers. There's a committee of validators who are validating the chain. And this is part of a gradual process of decentralization that's going on Arbitrum 1 and also on Nova, where we're moving toward a model of increasing decentralization. We're moving toward a model where the community plays a larger and larger role in governance. And we basically want to move to a fully decentralized model over time. And we'll be talking more about how that works But the technical decentralization of things like validation and participation in the data availability committee and so on, that's part of that whole story. So stay tuned for more discussion of sort of the decentralization roadmap.
Okay, word. And I saw someone was actually just requesting to speak and then hop back off. If anyone does have questions or wants to come up and ask them, please, you're welcome to. We got a good sized crowd here, so I'm sure there's some people out there who are itching to ask something. Yeah, Hunter, anything you want to talk about in terms of like community initiatives or for people who want to get involved with this? Like, what would be a good entry point for them?
So specifically for Nova, because we're really trying to, like market it as more like a social / kind of like gaming platform. I mean, like that's theoretically like it's an open chain, so you can do whatever you can on Arbitrum One, on Arbitrum Nova. But I do think the main thing right now obviously is Reddit's community points. So technically, if you're contributing in either of those two communities in Reddit, you're technically already using Nova, which is pretty cool. But I do think that over time, especially with, again, a lot more of like kind of the gaming community kind of migrating over to Nova, or in essence, kind of, back to Ethereum, because I think to date, a lot of the gaming applications are currently on All ones. Our pitch is definitely just going to be to kind of like bringing them back to Ethereum, bringing them back to their roots in a way, by essentially using Nova for that. And I think currently the main thing I think you can probably do like today is, like take a look at some of like the NFTs that currently exist on Nova. There aren't that many projects on there. It's like a bunch of like, random stuff to be frank. But it's definitely like an interesting thing to look at, I guess, if you are already on Nova, bridge some funds over and just looking at things to do.
Very cool. Thank you for that. Yeah. Lucifer, do you have a question for the panel?
Yeah, good afternoon all. My question goes to, my question is, while I was bridging, like after bridging from Ethereum to Arbitrum Nova, so bridging back is going to take me up to 7 days. Is it going to be fixed or is it going to be like that?
Oh, yeah, okay. So I think I understand the question. So when you bridge from Ethereum to Arbitrum One or Nova, that bridging happens pretty fast in a matter of a few minutes. Basically, the thing that limits the time there is the time you need for L1 finality, so that you've definitely handed over those assets on layer 1 before they can be sort of made available to you on layer 2. But when you bridge back from Arbitrum One or Nova back to Ethereum, there is a 7-day waiting period. And that's because of the way that the rollup protocol works. That's needed for security. There are fast bridging services that will let you bridge money. They'll essentially advance you those assets on L1 in exchange for a small fee, but give that to you right away. And so a lot of people do use those, and the ones that are supported on a particular chain, our bridging technology helps you do that. So there are options to do this. If you use our bridge in the basic way, though, there is a 7-day waiting period for withdrawals. The withdrawal, once we tell you the withdrawal will happen, the withdrawal will definitely happen, but it does take 7 days to take effect. Basically, that's the time that it takes the rollup protocol to be certain back on L1 that the withdrawal event actually happened on the Arbitrum chain. So yeah, so we've talked about whether we can make that time shorter, particularly on Nova, and there's a chance that we'll do that. We're looking seriously at whether it's possible to do that without sacrificing security.
Okay, that's cool. I would love it to be like that, like to bridge from Nova back to Ethereum very quick. So my second question is, with Nova, are you guys going to create your own token? Are you going to use Magic?
So so on Nova, the native currency is ETH, So ETH work like they do on Ethereum, and you pay your gas fees on Nova in ETH. And that's not going to change. A lot of people ask us, are we going to issue a token for Arbitrum or something like that? And of course, we have not announced any plans to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lucifer, for your questions. We got someone else that just brought up ebot.eth. Feel free to ask your question as well. And if anyone else is interested in hopping up and asking a question, we'll be going for a little bit longer here. And not sure if ebot is able to speak here.
It's like ebot.
Just let us know. Another quick thing that I was curious about that we can talk about as they get set up is there a good reason why someone would not use Nova and would use Arbitrum Classic, and when would someone want to make that consideration?
Yeah. So the difference is really that with Arbitrum Nova, there is this additional security assumption you have to make, which is that at least 2 of the 7 availability data committee members will be honest. If you're willing to make that assumption, then you get the same security on Nova as an Arbitrum 1. But if you really are looking for the utmost in security and you're trying to make the minimum number of security assumptions, then you may be more comfortable in Arbitrum 1. And so things that really require the highest security, we think are likely to stay on Arbitrum 1. Those that are willing to make the extra relatively, I think, very mild security assumption in exchange for lower fees, they'll be over on Nova. So we think there's value to different users and applications and use cases for each one. That's why they both exist.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. Weston, if you have a question, feel free to ask. And then if anyone else wants to hop up, ask a question, feel free, and then we'll start to close it out here.
Hey, GM guys, thanks for having me up here. Yeah, just had a quick question for you, Ed or Hunter, anybody. It was me, by the way, who asked about the individuals versus entities, on the transactions or the multi-sigs. But curious about your thoughts on zero knowledge. And I know that there's some work being done there, and where does that fit in with the current Nitro landscape? Because I'm super excited for Nitro. One of the DAOs that I work with, we just actually launched a farm on Arbitrum and have seen tremendous movement, liquidity into the ecosystem. So it's great. But I'm also curious, well, is that going to try to shift to, or, integrated, or what are your thoughts on that?
Here's what I think about this. Right now, ZK technology is not ready to operate at the kind of scale and cost level that would be competitive. The ZK advocates often talk about the cost of verifying ZK proofs, but what they don't talk about so much is how much does it cost to generate a ZK proof. So to give you an example, for an operation like the Ketchak 256 hash that is used all the time in Ethereum, Nitro is about 20,000 times the speed of a high-end ZK rollup in terms of the cost of actually including one of those operations into the chain. Right, it's a 20,000x cost and speed advantage for Optimistic over ZK for that operation. It's different for different operations, but for every operation, Optimistic is a lot faster and cheaper. And so there's a reason why no one has deployed a fully working EVM compatible ZK rollup that actually generates proofs so far, and it's because it's very expensive and very slow. And I don't think that's going to change in the near term. That's why I believe that Optimistic is the way to go now. Now, having said that, if that changes, if somehow the magic cryptography fairy waves her magic wand, and suddenly all of the big num operations that you need to do ZK proofs get incredibly cheap compared to other operations. I don't think that's likely, but should that happen, our basic architecture is compatible with ZK proving. We would switch if we thought were viable, but I think they're quite.
So show me the money is what you're
Sorry?
saying. So show me the money. If someone can show the benefits, then you're willing to take it in. But at this point, you're saying you don't think.
Yeah, we've looked at it really carefully. It's not that it's not quite there. It's not close to there right now. I think if what you want is general purpose EVM compatible chain that can operate at the scale of 10x or more the speed of Ethereum, and with the kind of cost of operation that you see on state-of-the-art chains, if that's what you want, then ZK technology right now is not even close. Like I said, if it gets there, we could switch.
And adoption, right? I mean, that's the big thing, is there's nowhere near ready for adoption in my mind, kind of to your point.
Right. And so, we would move our community over onto ZK as soon as that becomes viable. I don't think that's going to happen in 1 year or 2 years, and probably not 5 years. But if it does, if we see if the ZK train actually starts, puffing its engine and looking like it's ready to pull out of the station, which I think it's not right now. But if that starts happening, yeah, we would absolutely be on top of it.
Awesome. Thank you for the insight. Super helpful, for sure.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It sounds to me like when I hear people talk about AI, and people always talk about AI, it's just right around the corner. But then some of it actually did show up with things like DALL-E and GPT-3. So sometimes technology can surprise you.
Yeah.
But I definitely find that ZK conversation very interesting. But it's a huge tangent that probably will require its own Twitter space itself. But we have another person requesting to speak, so I'm bringing up Alex here. Let's see. They've got a question for the panel. Alex, feel free to ask your question.
As I was listening to you respond there, I was curious what you thought of ZK Sync EVM, because they're using zero knowledge proofs, and just would be curious because I haven't dug into it super technically. So, like at a high level, what would be the big differences between that and Arbitrum Nova and Nitro?
Nova and Nitro have fully working fraud proofs. That's the difference between our technology and every other general purpose EVM rollup. That it's, we focused from the beginning on building a system that was complete and had all of the security features built in and working. And a lot of others are out there with various products, but if you actually look carefully or ask careful questions, they're not providing end-to-end security proof. And that's the thing that is really not there for the ZK technology today. There are some aspects of execution where you can provide proofs, but there are other aspects that you just can't do at the scale and cost that would be needed.
Gotcha.
So basically, yeah. So I mean, my suggestion would be to ask some really pointed questions about what is proven and what is not proven, and is it actually an end-to-end proof that every step of computation and every hash and everything is correct, or are they only proving some properties of the system? And I would also ask questions about what is the cost of proving, and can you run a prover yourself? I think there's I think it's some of the ZK systems, there's a real lack of transparency about what they're actually providing. And it's worth asking questions about that. You want to see our prover, it's open source, it's there in our repo. You can go read the code. We're happy to walk people through it and explain why it proves everything correct.
cool. We'll have to check it out.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, both of you. That was a really fascinating conversation. I love, getting really deep into the guts of these things. So super happy to have people working on this tech to talk about this. Would either of you like to give any kind of last call outs for things people should check out or have an eye on in the future?
Sure. Obviously, check out Arbitrum Nova. It's a fully functional system. I think it works very smoothly. It's highly compatible with Ethereum and has super low fees. I was looking just before we came on, and at a token operation, I had a fee of 0.7 cents. That's like end to end the full fee that they paid for a token transfer operation. So very low cost, works really well. You can go to nova.arbitrum.io. Our other chain, Arbitrum One, we're really excited about upgrading that to the Nitro technology on a week from today, August 31st. Really anything, and I'll leave it to Hunter to point you to all of the social things, because we have a ton of activity. We have a super lively community and enthusiastic. So Hunter.
100%. Yeah, no, definitely. Of course, join the Discord. Whether it's general questions, that you have, that you want us to answer, or if you want to just kind of get in touch with the community there, whether it be developer focused or NFT or DeFi focused, we have a bunch of channels that kind of suits people's needs there. And obviously, biggest thing is that we're hiring. So if you are a kick-ass dev, kick-ass, marketer, kick-ass, whatever it is that you're good at, make sure to apply. We're always looking to scale not only Ethereum but also our team as well.
Awesome. Yeah, it seems like a cool team to work on. So if someone is out there looking, I would take advantage of that opportunity. All right. Well, thank you so much. It's been a really great time. I think this will about close it out for us. Unless there's anything else you want to say.
Thanks, everybody.
L222, let's go.
See you on Nova.
Thanks.
Yeah.